This is recorded.
You're redundant. You're gonna have to take out. Hold on for. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining Representative Clemens and myself to kick off this community meeting to talk about that 170 split, the one that we seem to always look at and ask, how did they set that one up? As Representative Clemens and I myself started talking about this probably a year or two ago, Representative, we recognize that it's a pretty dangerous intersection. And we needed to do something, at least get it started. We know it's a long-term process. So the goal of this meeting is to get some high-level summary of prior history, what's happened, safety concerns. We have several speakers tonight. Then we hope to hear, after we hear from those speakers, our goal is to get some community input from each of you, questions and concerns. We'll record all these questions and concerns and roll them up into a summary. And we will document all that so that we have that as backup. Just a couple of quick notes. Council Lady Henderson, I know, wanted to be here, but due to electronic recording and meetings, she was not able to make it. She's a terrific representative for those in her district, but cannot be on tonight. And then let me introduce Representative, I'm trying to find you, John Clemens. Thanks for joining me, and thanks for co-hosting with this. Representative Clemens?
Yeah, thank you. I think somebody disabled my video feed, but I'm here. Anyway, I just wanted to start by saying and welcoming everyone. And I know Councilmember Henderson, who you referenced, has done a lot of work on this issue and representing the other side of the street, so to speak. We have State Senator Heidi Campbell's with us this evening, who represents the area. She's focused on this issue as well, and will play a lead and instrumental role as we work with the state. We'll work on the, Senator Campbell will be working on the state side of this with me on the TDOT issues as it relates to the roadway, which is where our jurisdiction is in this matter. I just wanted to reiterate what Thom said. Appreciate Councilman Druffel's leadership on this and organizing this meeting with me on behalf of the community. The origin of this conversation came about organically. It really came about from feedback from residents, small businesses, and others who travel through the intersection. And so in an attempt to respond to those we represent, all the elected officials on here, and even those who couldn't be on here, are just trying to do our best to respond. There's obviously been long time efforts and conversation among the community members on this topic. I know this dates back to the West Nashville Community Plan, Major Collector and Street Plan. A lot of things are involved here, and a lot of people who've been working on this a long time in the district have provided a lot of feedback, and we appreciate that. We're obviously going to have to be working within TDOT's rules and budgets, Metro's rules and their budgets on this issue. Like Thom said, this is a long-term issue, but we just want to be as transparent and open about this as possible. We have no intention of forcing any specific plan or preconceived design on anyone. We are sincerely looking for feedback about what small businesses in the commercial district and residents of West Nashville want. And our goal here is to improve the quality of life and for everyone, the residents and the small businesses alike. And so that's how this came about. And this is step one. This is the starting gate, building upon years of feedback and other work of others. And we just wanted to relight this engine, so to speak, and hopefully see some progress in this area. I thank everyone who's going to be presenting tonight. I know we have a lot of Metro officials, have a TDOT official with us. Appreciate your time at this hour of the workday. And thanks for everybody for your input and participating this evening. And Thom, back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Representative. And let me acknowledge Mayor Hunt and Commissioner Moore. And I am trying to go through and see if there's anybody else that we missed that's an elected official. Okay, sorry if I missed. I am trying to go through this right now. Okay, we're going to get started. First speaker is going to be Chip Knopf with Metro Transportation. He's going to sort of touch on that area. And so Chip, I think you may have an overhead that Rosie will set up for you. Chip, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
That's right.
Apologize for the broke TV behind me. That's what happens when you have teenagers. So now we'll probably defer most of my time to Matt Survey from TDOT, as these are two state routes. I will explain though, for those that don't know, Metro or Nashville DOT does operate and manage the traffic signal itself. Any kind of regulatory signage goes through NDOT and the Traffic and Parking Commission. So that the yield control would go through the commission. Any kind of changes to the signal would go through NDOT. And then we would work with TDOT on markings changes and right-of-way changes itself. Any widening, any lane assignments, we would go through TDOT. So it's kind of a gray area on who owns what, but I did want to be clear on, we manage the signal, TDOT manages the roadway system itself. So Councilman, if you don't mind, and I know you have an agenda with me leading off, but as this is a TDOT jurisdiction thing, do you mind if we throw it to Matt Survey real quick? And I'll chime in with him along the way.
No, I'm glad to do that. Matt, you probably have the largest part of this, getting this going forward. So I'd love to hear from you. And as Matt, I understand you're the director of planning, long range planning for TDOT. So can we make you a short-term planner at the same time? I don't know if that's possible. Sure. Can we promote you into this new job?
For today, yes, you may do that. I'm actually trying to represent the entire department today. So,
okay.
I will do my best to do that. I've been with TDOT for about a year now, so I'm still pretty green to the ways. And I've also included some of my staff that is heavily concentrated in Region 3. So Nashville is one of their areas, and they might have an opportunity to speak up a little bit. But as Chip said, this area is two state routes coming together, one U.S. route. We've done a little bit of a history check to find out, what's happened in the past, and there has been some studies conducted, nothing in very great detail, and as you know, nothing has really come out of these studies. We did a check. It's currently not in the Nashville MPO's long range transportation plan. It's not included as an Improve Act project. So, the current urgency for it isn't necessarily there. The crashes, as we've looked at, the crash statistics don't bring it to a level of road safety audit findings at this point. So, but we do understand that the unique layout of this intersection, along with how the businesses along these routes are pretty open-ended. It's not really, it's an access management situation where there really isn't a lot of ways that you can have cars come in and out of these businesses. So we're here right now to kind of listen and hear what new things might come up from the business owners and some of the residents in that area. But that's kind of our background right now, where this intersection stands.
Thanks, Matt. I think there's, and that's what this meeting is all about, is to get input. Many of us have that go through that intersection, find it pretty problematic. I remember my first week here, I went through there and I almost went right through, not recognizing traffic comes from the other way. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I think there's, we walked along the businesses and I think there's a fair amount of accidents that we were told, but I don't know the statistics within front of me, but I think it's pretty problematic.
We did our statistics. Let's see, and these are 3-year statistics, and they go from October of 2018 to October of 21. So as of today, there have been about 93 crashes within that 3-year period. None of them have involved pedestrians that we have a record of. nor any fatalities, which are two of the items that usually bring the necessity to do these types of safety audits to the front. But after the split along 100, it looks like we had about 28 crashes during that same time period. And these are all reported through our the crash reporting system.
Okay. I had one question. I know Representative Clemens had a couple, and Senator Campbell, I see that you're on here, so thank you for joining us. If you could tell us, 93 seems to me like a lot of crashes. Could you maybe what gets your attention? And then this is for community input, is if you have questions for Matt and Mr. Let us know. Sorry, I have a dog barking in my background.
No,
so,
that's fine.
if you just put that on your chat, and I will forward those questions. In the meantime, Representative Clemens, I think you had some questions. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I just wanted to do some follow-up. And I think what was interesting from the crash summary reports, and Matt, if you could speak to this, if you don't mind, I thought it was pretty interesting. You know, the West Nashville Community Plan identified this intersection as, I think the term was defies driver expectation. Is there any other intersection in the state that even remotely resembles this, where you have a state highway coming in and splitting like this with this type of intersection?
I would assume you're referring to it being somewhat of a an acute angle, where it's not where they don't traditionally come in at 90 degrees. And this is a signalized intersection, so it does provide a little bit of a safe haven if you would obey the traffic, the lights at the signals.
Well, I mean, there's an aspect to it, and the West Nashville Community Plan kind of speaks to this. And I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm sure you haven't looked at this or haven't in some time. I mean, there's at one point, we're used to driving on the right side of the road, and there's an aspect of this intersection where you're almost on the left side of the road when you're looking to cut across and bring it back across. And various proposals were raised at that time, I think back as far as 2009, about how to make this a right angle. I think about 4 options to realign it to create a 90-degree intersection as opposed to what it is now. But it's an unexpected, as many times as you drive there, whether you're coming from Bellevue or coming from Belmead, it does kind of defy driver expectation, as that term is. And I think what was interesting to me about the total crashes, I think there's 2 different ones here during the same time period. One had 93 total crashes, one had 28. They're overlapping timeframes with 2 different segments of the road. You guys sent me. I think part of that is dealing with Harding, and part of it's dealing with the Highway 100. So,
correct.
The interesting thing to me is that all of these, or a vast majority of these, happened in daylight, in dry conditions, and there were no kind of extra factors. So it really, based on the data, it looked like all the accidents were happening because it was catching drivers. Some may have been distracted and rear-ended, but it looked like, based on the data that I have, that drivers weren't expecting what they approached. And I guess that's what we're really getting at here from a vehicular safety standpoint. And especially if you add pedestrians to the equation, it's a whole nother ballgame. I mean, there hasn't been any accidents there because most people just don't walk in that area. They know better. I think there may be one crosswalk there, but can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, I can try. Now, as you mentioned, the nature of the crashes, or the locations of the crashes, were not identified in those statistics. They more or less identify the type of crash. So you'll see that they're, property damage crashes and things like that. One thing that, I don't know if I should speak on my opinion or what I feel could be the issue, but
it's dangerous.
Yeah. The fact that we don't know if this is if it's actually happening at that intersection where the 2 roads cross. It could be it could be potentially where, because of all the open frontage in that area, that there could be side swipe crashes and things like that. So we really want to make sure that we dive a little bit deeper into what the crash nature of is and read the police reports to find out exactly what it is. Because when you try to combine them into just a statistic, you might be missing the actual purpose of what that is. So, I want to make sure that by speculating on what these crashes are, the purpose of these crashes, it may not necessarily be exactly that situation, and it would require a little more in-depth analysis. So, I'm looking over here at the overhead, so I hope it's not distracting. But as far as the pedestrian amenities, there really aren't any. There's we have a bike lane headed along Harding, and I don't see any crosswalks on this overhead right now. So
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
definitely it is not meant for pedestrian movements at this point.
yeah, and then that's kind of I think our goal. I mean, I am curious to hear what the community thinks, and that's why we're here, obviously, and not to listen to me just ask you questions. But I think you've got two great neighborhoods, or three, everybody around there, where you have a tremendous opportunity to create a commercial district that's thriving and hopefully walkable. I know that, a lot of planning in Nashville, from Nashville Next and everything, is really looking to focus on and boost that up, as well as the density. But it's just one last question, and then Thom, you can take back over. This is classified, I think, under the Major and Collector Street Plan as a T3M AB5, which, for those not keeping score at home, that means it's suburban classification, mixed use area, and it's an arterial boulevard, and I think there's 5 lanes there. Is there any limitations as to what TDOT can do for arterial boulevards or roadways of this kind? Because I want to make sure that we don't throw out pie in the sky ideas that aren't even possible for that area.
Yep. So that designation is a metro designation. That's right. During the plan. That's the cross section that was developed during their sub-area plan. So as long as we would have to have that conversation with Metro, and as long as it fits within right of way, or if there's, I guess, if that cross section would dictate more access or more right of way access to make that happen, then that's what we would have to have a conversation on. I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I didn't mean to cut you off, but also just to follow up is, we don't have to hit a threshold of accidents. I mean, that just means it hasn't been put on your radar because of that. I mean, we
That's
can
correct.
take action on this if everything else falls in line without reaching that threshold. Is that right?
Well, yeah, but again, as you know, the Improve Act is right now TDOT's top priority of improvements, and that expands across the state. For projects like this that come from a grassroots movement, we'd have to go through the typical process of working with the Nashville MPO and starting it from a point that a study would happen, and a project would be developed through that, and it would get into the development phase at that point. But as because Improve Act projects are the top priority, we'd have to determine where that would fit in with how this gets implemented.
Yeah. Hey, we got 440, fixed. So I thought I would just take another leap here. All right.
We'll call it Improve Act 2.0, right?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Councilman. I'll hand it back over to you.
Okay, I got a couple of comments and questions, Matt. And one is, Mayor Hunt does remember some fatalities. We're just not sure when that occurred. But I think we're, are leading ourselves if we don't, just because of the potential. And then it said that, a couple of comments, there's no surprise because very few people walk around this area, which I think we've already commented on.
Yes.
A person lives in an adjacent neighborhood, and of course, a sidewalk, of course, would really be of value. And I think we're going to sort of allude to that and get into that a little bit later. Another person suggests they had a head-on with a woman, ran the yield sign. And I think that's probably, if I were to guess, that becomes one of the more regular type of accidents, not recognizing that yield sign or where people come, and then they can come pretty fast. Another recognized that there were several serious accidents at the split. Again, another comment on sidewalks. And we think with the Williamson County growth, there is another more growth there brings more traffic down 100, which is true from Fairview in that area.
Mhm.
Talking about a recommendation again, if you're on, we're recording all these so that we can record and document all these for our records, so that we can start to take a look at where we can in effect change. Lower speed limit before on Highway 100 is another one. Pedestrian bridge over traffic. Multiple roundabouts is another one that someone's suggesting. Another comment is understand this would need to go through MPO project studies, TDOT reviews to get the project developed. So we recognize that this is a long-term project, and I think there's multiple layers to the project, if I were to guess. Clearly, the intersection alone is there, but I would even suggest if you go back up to Leak, there's the traffic has ballooned all along the streets that surface onto 7100 right there in Harding. So it's gaining as we've gotten busier, and so clearly that's for us it's a problem with 93 accidents. I don't know, I don't have all the stats, but I would sort of suggest that leads me to believe that we're missing potentially some more dangerous ones down the road, because people coming down Harding can easily miss that yield sign and knock someone right off. So those are the comments and questions. I again, for all those on here, Representative Clemens and myself plan to set this as a foundation, a starting point to to advocate to get some changes made, so we can turn Mr. Matt Mercier into a short-term planner. Just kidding, but I appreciate the laugh. Another comment, line of cars for Dunkin' Donuts has caused backups during rush hour. Again, some of our commercial additions, changes have ballooned over into other areas. I was there the other day, and clearly you get people coming off Leak, taking a left, backs up everybody down Bellmead Plantation Way. So lots of changes in the last few years that puts a lot of pressure on this road. Okay, that's the comments so far I have. Next up, we're going to, one of the things that we talked about, and Matt, thanks so much. We appreciate it. And
Sure.
We'll get these notes to you. Really appreciate you coming on and being a part of this. You can tell, and I can absolutely echo that a lot of our neighbors, citizens, find this to be one of the most dangerous they've ever been through. So it's very unusual, to say the least, whatever description you have. It just is, with 93 accidents, to me, in my mind, seems to cause a concern. So we'll just advocate as much as we can to eventually do it. I know it may not be a priority, but I just think we're waiting for that one bad accident to occur. And if they're occurring during the day, you can only imagine at nighttime what at some point we're going to get. The next speaker we have, one of the things that Representative Clemens, myself, and when I first started in this area, is that we looked at this whole area, all the commercial areas, and we asked with Ms. Kemp, the Director of Planning, could we reimagine the area to make it safer with sidewalks? How do we work this? And we know it wouldn't be an overnight project, but how do we take a look at what we can do in this commercial area and make it a much more friendly, walking friendly, bicycle friendly area? And so we asked Felix Castrodon, hopefully I got that right, Felix, to come on and sort of talk about some of the discussions in the past. Felix. Good day.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good. Thanks, Felix.
Thank you, Councilmember Druffel and Representative Representative Clemens, and I appreciate the opportunity. I don't really have a lot to add from a transit perspective. I am with WeGo Public Transit. I'll just say that we have a Route 5 Bellevue that passes through this area. It's about every 30 minutes service. We are going to be increasing that now starting in October to every 20 minutes during peak times. We do have 2 bus stops in the vicinity, not specifically at the intersection, but we have one inbound stop at Harding, just in front of the parking for the Walgreens. And we have an outbound stop across from Page Road. Coincidentally, the boarding activity at those stops is not super high. And I think it's a reflection of the difficulty of being able to walk around there. For any transit rider that is a pedestrian, it's not a great environment. We do try to locate our stops closer to intersections that are signalized and that have crosswalks, just to minimize those conflicts between our riders and the vehicles in the regular traffic. We coordinate on a regular basis with NDOT in a lot of these projects. So anything that will happen here will definitely, we would like to be very greatly involved to make sure that if there's any improvement, including sidewalks and things like that, that can be accommodated to improve our infrastructure at the stops. Sidewalks is one of our main issues when we're trying to provide accessibility to bus stops for the riders. So this is always a constraint, and evidently in a situation like this is always going to be a little difficult for any rider to be able to access that. We have been involved as part of the development that is happening across from Page Road. We have some transit design guidelines that we put together that just gives an idea of how any development can make improvements to bus stops that will be accommodating to our riders and to our service. And we've worked with TDOT and we work with NDOT on a frequent basis to be able to put this in front of their staff and in front of the developers. So for this specific location across from Page, we've provided that to the developer, to the engineer, so that whatever happens there, we would just hope to be very involved and work closely with any other departments and with you, council member, and anybody else involved.
Thanks so much, Felix. And just to clarify, Felix is with WeGo for the planning with WeGo. I might have not mentioned that, but question, I guess, I would assume that I know the answer is when you have more sidewalks to get people to the bus stops, I would think that makes them more accessible then.
Oh, that is absolutely the case. And sidewalks, or the lack of sidewalks, is usually a big deterrent for provide an accessible and safer access to transit. So we work with NDOT very closely on a lot of those developments. With planning department, we are part of their development review process. Whenever there's developments that are happening or impacting our routes or nearby stops, we get inserted into that process to be able to see how we can improve any of those for transit access.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Any questions for Felix? Now we have him with WeGo from his perspective. I have some comments I'm going to put in that I'll note next. Anything for Felix? A couple comments. One is, I think, yeah, would we ride a bike if we had that opportunity through this intersection and from that direction? And it sounds like maybe. Cars traveling from Fairview, which that's some of my experiences. I see traveling in excess of 60 miles an hour, ready to try to get through this light because they're using an alternative for 40. And of course, Charlotte is becoming another problematic road. So in 2009, the community plan from Allen discussed a few options. Highway 100 T-boning into or T'ing into 70 has the consensus best option. So that's seems like there's been some pre-work done on that. Those are there. Okay, Nita McCraig is there with planning, and she said her Wi-Fi's crashed, but she's on by phone. So Anita, can you hear us? Rosie, do we have to, Anita?
Let me see if I can unmute her.
Okay, thanks, Rosie. And I'd like to recommend Rosie while she's saying she's our chief of staff, and she makes us all look better than we deserve. So thank you.
Hi,
Rosie.
Councilmember. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, thanks, Anita. Thanks for
I
being
am so
persistent
sorry.
there.
We rely so much on technology, and just as Representative Clemens said, Nashville next, my Wi-Fi crashed. And so I'm like, oh dear.
There's not a ghost there or anything, is there?
I don't know. We are getting close to October, so I don't know. I'm so sorry about that, though. You had asked me just to share, and I know that everyone's already touched on it a little bit, about how we work at planning with Nashville Next in the big picture. And of course, we started doing community planning back in the late 1980s, early 1990s. And so I participated in 3 iterations of the West Nashville Community Plan. And so I know, that this intersection has always been on people's minds, especially both you and Representative Clemens touched on that neighborhoods surround it. They want it to be a hub of activity. It's a neighborhood center. Folks want to make it thriving and focus at a neighborhood scale, but then walkability is something that has come up over and over again in our work. With safety of the intersection, improving businesses and enhancing it instead of continuing to spread, make it serve the neighborhood, but especially those pedestrian connections, walkability, in addition to trees, landscaping, everything that makes a place a quality place.
Anita, is there any prior plan on, I know when Lucy Kemp and I, when I first started, we drove around. Is there any existing prior plan on ideas to do all those that you just suggested?
Well, back in Representative Clemens was looking at the community plan that talked about transportation planning as was part of our long range planning team. Recently, that team moved over to the new Nashville Department of Transportation. So now they're part of NDOT, but we work closely. The community had asked them to study some alternative suggestions for improving the functionality of that. And so back in 2009, the transportation team had looked at some ideas for that and just sketched out some brief concepts. But as Matt was talking about, things need to be studied in more detail. Those were just some initial walk in the area, looking at things, looking at what other communities had done.
Okay. Any conclusions or anything that you can, I know, improve walkability, improved bicycle lanes, etc., are part of it. Were there any details behind that, or is it just the general idea or direction?
More the general idea or direction with a little bit of notation, like things like, could you improve visibility if you elevated the median some or planted the median some? How do you, better call attention to the fact that area is going to function differently? Would crosswalks help? And how, should more stop signs be added? Things like that would help. In one case, there was even, an idea of maybe a traffic circle a little bit south of the intersection to help, with some of that.
Yeah, and Ryan Carr, suggested a crosswalk at Belmead Galleria intersection is much needed. And by all means, it's hard to get across the street without any opportunity or crosswalk. Is that something that we can do without TDOT? And that might be a question for Chip.
Let me turn my camera on, sorry.
That's right.
Okay, so yes, the operation and the function of the signal in that regard would go through NDOT. We can change the heads and we can put crosswalks and pedestrian signals. Again, back to the TDOT role, anytime you change the lane configuration, if you add a left turn lane or a right turn lane, that would go through TDOT, but anything to do with the operation of the signal, that would go through NDOT, and it doesn't go through the Traffic and Parking Commission. The kicker is for us, and we have to meet ADA compliance, of course. And so anytime you have a crosswalk, you need to have these ADA compliant cross slopes, and you have to have buttons within reach, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's not as easy as just putting up a couple of pedestrian signals and some white paint. But to answer your question, Councilman, this is something that goes straight through NDOT.
Okay, that's good to know. That means we understand TDOT's got priorities, and I know when Representative Clemens and myself started talking about this, we knew this was per representative. We knew it's a starting point, but you got to start someplace. And so if we can start to find pieces that we can make safer and more viable for this commercial community, I think it's at least a start. So that's good to know. Representative Clemens, did you have comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to, a lot of people have mentioned a potential roundabout to change that intersection from the way it is now, just to making a big roundabout. I'd read some previous studies where there was an elevation issue with creating a roundabout there to change that intersection. So I was curious whether that's even still an issue. I think that was a while ago, and I think the public perception and even road planners acceptance of roundabouts has evolved since that determination was made. So I just wanted to hear from Chip or Matt at TDOT or whoever about a roundabout specifically, to keep traffic flowing. I know it's a tough design because you have a couple of roads coming in there at weird angles. Is that even a possibility?
So from the,
Yes,
I'm
you
sorry.
turned your camera. I see you turned
Yeah,
your
well,
camera on.
I
I'll
mean,
let you go.
it may not be the easiest roundabout that's ever been built. So, looking at how Harding elevates over the rail tracks and Bonds Gap branch, it would not be. It would be a more challenging roundabout to build, but I would not say that it's completely impossible. The cost may become the biggest factor in it, but I think as an engineer myself, that would be a great challenge to take on. But if the price tag is too much, then we'd have to look at some other viable options.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I love the attitude, willing to take on a challenge. If it makes the most sense, I think it's worth trying. So I just wanted to get that. And Chip, do you have anything to add?
Well, I think you nailed it with the cross slope is always important. Flat's always easier. Some people fear that roundabouts are not pedestrian friendly. We can work with that, but they do move traffic. And you say it's got some, angles that are coming in on these approaches that sometimes can help the roundabout operation. So, but those are the three challenges. Oh, and one of the biggest ones, right of way. Roundabouts need a lot of room with this kind of traffic. But so if you can get past those check boxes, you're off to a good start. And I would think, looking at the pole structures out here, looks like there's a pretty good bit of right of way. That's a very high level observation looking at the Google Maps on my PC.
Yeah, there had been a previous designation or a drawing of that it obviously went on to some of the property there that came in at angles, but it didn't look like an insurmountable hurdle, so to speak. But since you mentioned the traffic, I don't think we've touched on what those counts are. For those watching, I think it'd be important to point out that the 2020 traffic information on State Route 100 of the Bellevue approach was 14,133, I think, vehicles per day. And that count was done on March 9th, 2020. State Route 1 or US 70 South Bellevue approach was 19,030 vehicles per day. And that count was done on that same date. And then US 70 South Bellmead approach was 34,612 vehicles per day, and that was on the same date as well. So just to give people an idea how many cars are coming through there at that time. And that, of course, was during right at the beginning of the pandemic. So that may have been a little low. But Councilman, just wanted to raise that issue.
No, that's good. Good information. That's a lot. That's a lot of cars. Didn't know it was that many. Couple more questions here popped up. Alan Dooley, thanks. It says, Anita, you're there. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Question from Alan is, what are some of the other hurdles to deal with if Metro does a detailed neighborhood plan, such as parking, sidewalk, signage? What benefits would a neighborhood overlay give to businesses?
I think, there's several different tools, and oftentimes people think, well, what about an urban design overlay? And, those are issues sometimes if building scale, signage, some of those things. There's also a corridor overlay that helps with beautification, signage, and parking out front. So, to help like businesses, if one of your main concerns is the appearance of the corridor, then yes. But if your main concern is the street itself and how it functions and how the different components of the street, sidewalks, bike lanes, all that function, then those aren't necessarily what you want to do, because we've already got tools in place with the major and collector street plan and some things that call for what the cross section should look like.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, because I think one helps the other. I mean, if you could add more sidewalk accessibility, it changes the complexion where parking doesn't become so, difficult right in front of the business.
Right.
Another one is sort of Chip and Matt. It's again from Alan. If a roundabout will not work, does it make sense to do T, a lower traffic 100 into a higher traffic 70?
I think it, again, without really going into any deep analysis, I think there are, multiple possibilities that we could look at, but T intersections obviously require the acquisition of right-of-way to make that happen. I don't know how, and with this elevation change as well, may not be able to get it down safe enough to reach that. So again, I'm not trying to just initial looks at it. There could also be cost prohibitive designs that would be from a T intersection as well.
Okay, yeah. Another comment is a landscape roundabout seems to be an answer. A T intersection would have traffic backed up. That's for you engineers to determine, but it seems logical that having the right answer is as important as having any answer, because the last thing we know, coming from Fairview and as Williamson County develops in that area, we know we'll get more traffic. Richard Ewing, intersection literally dates back to farming days a century ago. I don't know if I lived there at that time, but it could solve, especially if it crosses over to get 70. So a roundabout could solve. Again, an advocate for a roundabout of some type. So I heard from several of you that roundabouts seem to be a good answer. Clearly, we need the engineers to do a good study, Chip and Matt, and we're probably a little ways away from that. But I think we'll probably have to figure a way to do this in stages, in some fashion, to both improve the commercial area, streets that come in, accessibility, et cetera. I think it's going to take some time. I think for any of us, and again, Representative Clemens, myself, and Councilor Henderson, we all sort of agreed that it's important to do. We just got to start working stage by stage and trying to make a difference on all this. Another comment. Hetty Drive already teased at this intersection. It's a problem too that could be a roundabout, could solve. Again, some engineering and imagination of budget are always an issue. I think everybody that's on here is on here for a good reason. We all see the issues and the potential. Hopefully we can move the dime a little bit farther down the road in the next couple of years here. Martin Schaffner says, interlate, but sidewalks are the most pressing issue. We have the best commercial mix of any neighborhood in Nashville. Walking would be great. So when I walked, my wife and I walked to each business, we clearly saw that. There's nice sidewalks in areas, and if we could continue the sidewalk, we would really make this much more accessible. So that's an opportunity that clearly presents itself. And that is all I have in terms of comments. So I think we can wrap this up. Representative Clemens, your thoughts? Next up.
Yeah, thanks, Councilman. I think this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate Metro officials. I appreciate Matt from TDOT. I especially love the attitude and the openness. I mean, oftentimes we've had conversations with nobody on this call, but, and the first answer or response is generally no, or that's not possible. So, I mean, I just want to thank everybody for being open to the ideas. This is a first step. This is an initial conversation. Like I said at the outset, we don't have a predetermined plan about what we want here. We don't have something we're trying to force on everybody very subtly. It's an open conversation. We're being as transparent as possible. So thank you to Chip, to Matt, to Felix. Who else is on here? Angela, everybody who participated. I really appreciate it. And to the community who provided a valuable input, we appreciate it. You all know where to reach the councilman and I, where to reach Senator Campbell, who's going to play a vital role in this. Angie Henderson, others will play vital roles in this. This is a long process. This is something that, we're just really relighting this fire to get this, it's been talked about for a long time, but we're really trying to get this thing moving again and start this long process. If we don't start it now, it's never going to happen to the extent you all want it to happen. And I really do sincerely believe, the councilman and I have talked about this, we can figure out something here that works for residents and the small businesses and the entire community. It works for everyone, and I think we have a tremendous opportunity here to rethink an area, reimagine an entire area that benefits everyone. And it resembles something like modern planning, because I think one of the commenters earlier said, nobody would design a roadway like this where you have a major highway coming in and splitting and with that incline and so forth. So I think they're right. So let's reimagine it. Let's get creative. We'll continue the conversation. I think the next steps are Councilman Druffel and I and other elected leaders and officials will talk, regroup, see what's best, put it back out there, a summary of this meeting, and then we'll have another meeting about some proposals and what the specific next steps are and how to move this ball forward. So, Councilman, thank you again for your leadership on this, your organization of this meeting, and including this at every level. I appreciate the members of the neighborhoods. It's an honor for me to see neighborhood leaders on here where we got these ideas to begin with, because y'all hosted neighborhood meetings, neighborhood association meetings. Your leadership resulted in the conversation, which is now resulting in action. So thank you all. Proud to be a part of it and represent you. Back to you, Thom. Thanks.
Thanks so much. And ditto here. I've been in business for 100 years. It's great to do this, but it's even better when you can start getting results. And I can assure you that I will get with Representative Clemens and the other elected officials and see what we can actually do, even if it's in stages. I think, as many of you, I'm impatient. I'd like to see it tomorrow, but we know it's not going to change overnight. But truly appreciate your comments. As we talked, the most important first stage was to hear from you, and I think we heard some pretty solid resounding themes. So thanks for all joining. If you have continuous questions of Representative Clemens or myself, I know I'm tomdruffel.com or tom.druffel@nashville.gov. Please follow through with any comments that you might have. Representative Clemens, quick email address or best way to connect?
Yeah, so if you just Google John Ray Clemens, you'll find all my contact information pretty easily at capital.tn.gov. Just click on House and members, and all of my contact information is there, of course. And I also want to recognize one person I don't think got recognized was Council Lady Hauser was participating on this call. Want to make sure and recognize her, so I appreciate her involvement on this. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate. Have a good dinner.
Thank you.
Bye now.